Ladies and gentlemen, we'll now begin plenary session 1 titled South Korea and its Neighbors. This session will be moderated by Ms. Karen House, a former publisher of the Wall Street Journal and a senior fellow at Harvard Kennedy School's Belfer Center. Ms. House, the floor is yours.
Thank you, thank you. I feel like we don't need an introduction to the issue here, given that wonderful film we saw that opened this whole gathering. It did a good job of laying out the issue and where we are. We have 6 very distinguished and experienced panelists. I deliberately did not ask them to prepare any remarks because I would prefer a conversation instead of a presentation. And all of them are clearly smart and experienced enough on short notice to speak. So my goal is to get each of them to speak for 3 or 4 minutes about the key issues that they think Korea should be, how Korea should be dealing with its neighbors. And then we will have a discussion, and hopefully you all will feel free to participate, because I think getting questions from the audience and ideas and issues is very important. So we're going to start with Professor Qingguo from Peking University. He's a professor of international studies there and has been at this conference for a number of years. I've seen you many times. So the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. It's a great honor to be back again. Many thanks to President Jong and the Asan Institute for the invitation. My heartiest congratulations to the 80th anniversary of the ROK independence. Over the past 8 decades, the ROK has achieved astonishing progress. Rising from the ashes of poverty and underdevelopment, it has blossomed into a thriving, modern, and prosperous country. It has also successfully transitioned itself from an authoritarian regime to a vibrant democracy, earning the well-deserved respect and admiration on the global stage. Since this panel is about ROK and its neighbors, I will just focus on bilateral relations between the 2 countries. The 2 countries established diplomatic relations in 1992. The relationship have made a lot of changes, of progress during the past years. We have become major trading partners of each other. Our people are traveling across the country, the borders, and visit each other. And also we share a lot of common concerns, and in the process, we have benefited tremendously from this relationship, both countries. And of course, we have met many problems. Over time, things like the Gogoria incident, the THAAD crisis. But through concerted efforts on both sides, we managed to stabilize the relationship and then push the relationship forward. Okay. Now the relationship is at another crossroad. Okay. The geopolitical competition between China and the US has put great pressures on the relationship. How are we going to deal with it? If you look at the interests, we have a lot of shared interests and stakes in maintaining a stable and mutually beneficial relationship. But there are many people on both sides who believe that our policies are against each other. In China, some view the ROK as part of a threat posed by the US due to its alliance with the latter and advocate for more assertive stance against the ROK as a means of countering the perceived US threat. In the ROK, certain individuals believe that as an ally of the US, the ROK should collaborate with the US to contain what they perceive as a China threat. And these groups share a misguided belief that confrontation between China and the ROK is inevitable, and their respective countries should get prepared for such an outcome. Under the circumstances, the question remains, can the two countries sustain their stable and mutually beneficial relationship in the years ahead? The shared interests and high stakes involved strongly suggest they not only can, but they must. However, the future of this relationship also hinges on the choices made by both countries. It is the sincere hope of the people of both nations that wise decisions will be made to safeguard and further strengthen this important bilateral relationship. Let me stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate the brevity. That will be important because Victor Cha has to leave at, 10 after 11. We want to make sure we hear from you. The next speaker is Professor Lee, who was the founder of the Asian Democracy Research Network in 2015, and is a professor in the Graduate School of Governance at Sungkyunkwan University. So go ahead, Professor Lee. Nice to have you.
Thank you, Karen. Good to see you again. I have only 4 minutes to talk, but when the question was South Korea's neighbors, we are typically thinking about 4 powers. We used to say surrounding big 4 powers, in Korean, 주변 사강. But I'm glad these days we are not using that word frequently compared to the past, so-called surrounding big 4s. I think its main reason is that South Korea's power has been increased and our international influence and also contribution has been very high. So there is a kind of, we catched up the power vis-a-vis the stronger nations surrounding South Korea. And we typically say the USA, America is one of the surrounding powers, even though they are distant allies, so they are still neighbors. And of course, USA is so important to Korea's national security, and also America has assisted South Korea to emerge as a very influential global partner in international venues and many multilateral settings. So I think our ties with USA has been sustained to the very long future. However, I'm one of Koreans who are disappointed with the current administration's orientations, this unilateral approach or transactional approach, and also this the reciprocal tariffs and so forth. However, I think it's very important for South Korea to talk to USA why the MAGA, Making America Great Again, cannot be achieved with the USA's presence in Indo-Pacific. And therefore, Korea and Japan should work with the USA to sustain trilateral cooperation between USA and Korea and Japan to make the liberal order to prevail in our region. And next neighbor, of course, China. China is so important economically and also politically. And I think we have to hit to the strategic interest of China over the Korean Peninsula. And I'm very sorry to hear, as my good friend Qingguo has mentioned, some Koreans are thinking while we are cooperating with the USA, we should they develop that attitude of very confrontational attitude to China. I think that this is absolutely wrong. And also some Koreans developing a kind of anti-China sentiments, even to say hatred, is absolutely wrong. That's not good at our country. And also from last year, we are also studying the cooperation with China again, and that's a very good sign. And Japan, as our title is saying, this is the 60th anniversary of normalizing relationship with Japan. So this is very important. And we have to recognize Japan not only just a bilateral partner, and also important regional partner, providing public goods to the region. And after all, Korea and Japan share the liberal values, and also we are the affluent democracy, so we can contribute very much, many things to the region and also to the world. So, of course, we have historical issues, but for the larger things, we can work together. I think our partnership with Japan should be enhanced in the next government as well. And for the Russia, it's very difficult to say because of Russian war, aggression in Ukraine. It's very difficult to normalize relationships in the near future. However, we have to do something to dissociate and to discourage the Russia's the involvement, cross ties with North Korea. So that matter, of course, we have to think about our own strategy toward Russia. Let me say this with this last word. For Korea's neighbors, it's not limited to these surrounding powers. The Korean neighbors is global. With the Korean cultural power, or this K-pop and soft power, I found many, many friends in Africa and also the Latin America. So therefore, I think Korea has a very good potential to become a neighbor, not limited to the geographical neighbors, and also neighbors all over the world. So let me stop here.
Thank you. You're calling for everyone to get along. The next speaker is Mr. Nagamine Yasumasa.
Yes.
Did I get it?
Sure.
From Japan, who is a lawyer and has been involved in these issues in that regard, and also was Japan's ambassador to South Korea.
Yes.
So go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Colin. And first of all, I'd like to congratulate the Asan Institute for Policy Studies of hosting this important gathering, Asan Plenum 2025, at a very important juncture. And I'm so much honored to be invited as a panelist of this gathering this time. And on the occasion of the 80th anniversary of Korea's independence, I'd like to extend my congratulations to the peoples and government of Korea for that. And also, I'd like to express our congratulations to Japan and Korea mutually for the 60th anniversary of the conclusion of the Treaty of Japan, ROK, on basic relations. I just turned to 71, so as a 70 person, I'm kind of sandwiched between 80 and 60. But in Japan, maybe in Korea or China, the age 70 also is a part of the celebration to reach. So I am proud to be here as an old man of 71, but still celebrating 80s and 60s together. I was ambassador to Korea from Japan between 2016 to 2019. And then at the time, they started off with a good atmosphere between Japan and Korea, but towards the end of my tenure, the relationship getting soured, perhaps mainly because of the issue of former civil workers from Korean Peninsula. We call CWK issue. And then during my tenure, the relationship didn't improve. But after that, with the inauguration of a new administration in Korea, the sort of downward spiral stopped, and then the stagnation of people's exchange due to the coronavirus pandemic also overcome. Now the relationship between Japan and Korea at the governmental level and the people-to-people level dramatically restored. And then as Ambassador Mizushima cited some numbers, exchange of people level and economic activities, mutual economic activities are recording all-time high in the 60 years' time. So we are in a very healthy trend between Japan and Korea at this time. And then this better situation has arisen due partly to the resolution of the issue of CWKs, which I referred to earlier, the decision by the Korean government to resolve the issue. And then Japanese government responded to that initiative in order to heighten bilateral relationship to a new degree. So I think that is a kind of effort of both sides kind of bear fruit at this time. And then in this situation, I would like to assure you that as Ambassador Mizushima told, that the basic stance of the government of Japan is that we are very much want to keep this relationship going into the years beyond the 60th anniversary of normalization. And so we are very much committed to it. And then in Korea, we are expecting that the new administration, new president and the new administration will be coming in June. So we look forward to working closely with the next generation of Korean government. But as I said earlier, the people-to-people ties are so strong, and we are in a position to maintain such strong relationship between the two. I would stop that, and then I would refer to other neighboring states, including the United States, China later.
Yeah,
Thank you.
the people-to-people numbers actually surprised me. Perhaps they shouldn't, but I thought that was a very strong point made by
Significant.
both Dr. Chung and the ambassador. The next speaker is Ambassador Shin, who's the deputy chairman of the NEAR Foundation, a think tank specializing in Northeast Asian affairs, which is, for me, the territory we're talking about now, the neighborhood. We can debate the neighborhood. Go ahead, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you, Karen, for kind introduction. And like the previous speakers, I'm also grateful to the Asan Institute for Policy Studies for inviting me at this August gathering. As you know, South Korea is facing unprecedented strategic challenges on the domestic and international fronts. Domestically, we are now facing an early presidential election, and the outcome of the presidential election on June the 3rd will affect the thrust of Korean foreign policy in one way or another. If the current leading candidate, Mr. Lee Jae-myung from the Progress camp, if elected, then the new administration will try to have better ties with North Korea and
Better ties with whom?
with North Korea and China at the expense of strong ties with the United States and Japan in the Yoon administration. On the other hand, if a single candidate from the conservative camp wins against the odds, then the Yoon government's foreign policy will be maintained in large part. So that outcome of the upcoming presidential election will have tremendous impact on the next phase of Korean foreign policy. On the other hand, on the international planning, we are faced with a lot of challenges, such as North Korea on the verge of becoming a North Korean nuclear weapon state, and a deepening U.S.-China strategic competition, and close strategic collaboration between Pyongyang and Moscow, and further Washington's undermining of liberal international order and the coastal alliance. So under these circumstances, the next administration will have to navigate in a subtle, creative, and effective manner. So I would like to elaborate 5 points for the next administration in Korea. First, the most important and a difficult task is to adjust Korea's alliance with the United States. We cannot count on alliance dividend under the Trump 2.0 administration. And Washington is likely to demand Seoul to increase defense burden sharing and change military roles in the region. And any reduction of U.S. troops in South Korea and alteration of its roles should be a serious concern for Korea, especially given the mounting North Korean nuclear threat. And Washington making a flawed deal with Pyongyang at the expense of Seoul might become another source of rift between the two allies. And in addition, the whimsical and destructive tariff wars may also damage bilateral economic ties between Seoul and Washington. So Trump's transactional diplomacy requires South Korea to prepare leverages to negotiate a balanced win-win deal to accommodate the U.S. needs and win South Korea's economic and security interests at the same time. It's a very delicate and difficult process, but we have to just overcome such hardship. Second, South Korea should expand its diplomatic horizon to defend the liberal international order. So Seoul must strengthen ties with Japan, which, as a key U.S. ally, shares strategic interest in ensuring peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific region. And South Korea also reinforced its regional partnership with NATO and intra-regional partnership with Japan, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. And trilateral and other multilateral network should be continuously pursued. And at the same time, South Korea need to accede to CPTPP and other trading webs. Third, South Korea should reach out the global South, especially Southeast Asia, to provide, to just getting some breathing space from the great power rivalry and some attain diplomatic leverage. Fourth, we need stable relations with Beijing, and that must be another priority for the next administration. And of course, at the same time, we must keep principled stances on issues like our alliance with the United States, freedom of navigation, and promotion of human rights, including those of North Korean refugees and asylum seekers. Last but not least, Seoul has a vested interest in promoting multilateralism and the rule of law in international relations as a middle power. We should join forces with peace-loving and freedom-loving countries to uphold the principles enshrined in the UN Charter and the fundamental norms of international law. In conclusion, the challenges ahead are very stark, but we must focus our energy in crafting a foreign policy to safeguard our interests and promote our values and to seize the opportunities in this chaotic and fluid international environment. I stop here. Sorry for...
Thank you, thank you. The fifth and next to last speaker, Professor Soeya Yoshihide, is a professor emeritus at the Faculty of Law at Keio University and has participated in multiple projects led by the Japanese Prime Minister's office, so he's very immersed in both security and geopolitical issues. So, Professor.
Thank you very much, Madam House. I also like to repeat my deep appreciation to the Asan Foundation Institute for realizing this year's plenum, as well as inviting all of us, including myself, Honorary Chairman Chung Moon-jun, and Chairman Yoon Young-kwang, and President Chegan. Thank you indeed. Well, I'm very, of course, excited. I'm a born middle of the roader and a dreamer, so my points will reflect, that basic kind of attitude of mine. And Japan and Korea relationship has made a long way since its diplomatic normalization. And I would describe the rationality and logic of our mutual cooperation as follows. And first of all, Professor Isok-Jong sort of said she doesn't like the concept of four great powers, and I don't like that concept either. And but our angles may be slightly different. To make complex things simple, Korea and Japan are surrounded by the three great powers, rather than Korea surrounded by the four great powers. And the three great powers are, of course, the US, China, Russia, and they define the power structure of international politics. And we are surviving under the power relationship among the three countries. And secondly, Korea and Japan are, of course, the most advanced democracies and market economies in Asia. And we share a lot of common agenda and even values because of that. And additionally, it should not be overlooked or underestimated that social and cultural empathy is increasingly being fostered within civil societies of both nations. And lastly, this is sort of a new thing that I would like to intrude into our discussion, which could be controversial, I know. That's the point about introducing this. Lastly, South Korea and Japan share important minilateral cooperation frameworks. It's in plural. That is Japan, South Korea, US, of course, and Japan, South Korea, China. We have these trilateral frameworks and even summits. And if strategic alignment between these two frameworks can be achieved through Japan-South Korea cooperation, the contribution to the stability and prosperity in the Asia-Pacific or the Indo-Pacific should be immense. And I would like to come to this point at the very end. But before that, I have to touch upon the transformation of the United States, symbolized by the emergence of President Trump. Again, to make complex things very simple, it seems to me that President Trump inhabits a parallel world, so to speak. Parallel world. That is distinct from the world we, including Japan and South Korea, live in. In that world, the principles and assumptions of the post-war liberal international order are not shared. Instead, what prevails is a pursuit of American interests based on the America First principle, which drives a strong desire to transform US foreign relations through transactional diplomacy. In that world, there is no concept of contributing to the prosperity of international community or maintaining a stable balance of power in international politics. So we have to deal with that president for some years to come, because no matter where he lives, the impact upon what he does upon us should be equally immense. So Japan and South Korea, for the time being, and maybe for many years to come, have to continue to cooperate with other like-minded countries, and we must work to protect multilateral institutions that uphold a free and open international order, perhaps, depending on circumstances, in the absence of the United States. On the other hand, an equally pressing issue is, of course, how to respond to the growing influence of Russia, China, and North Korea on the geopolitics of Europe and the Indo-Pacific. For Japan and South Korea, there may be moments when we have to hope for the best without being able to do much. However, we should not abandon the possibility of change in the United States when the time of need arises. And in this context, it is crucial to maintain close contact and dialogue with political leaders, policymakers, and institutions, which are all represented here, I believe, in the United States, who share the same values and ideals. And lastly, coming back to this question of alignment, strategic alignment between two minilaterals, where Japan and South Korea are the common members. We have very important multilateral framework to deal with both China and the United States separately. And I think we are dealing with issues separately these days. But we should try to somewhat harmonize, these two. And there could be three important issues in this, which is not being developed these days necessarily. But one is, of course, about North Korea. We have to talk to Americans, of course, about North Korea, and we have to talk to Chinese about North Korea. And Japan and China sharing these two minilaterals is a great opportunity for us to talk to each other and come to a similar perspective. strategic perspective. And two is, of course, Sino-American strategic rivalry. This is also a common issue for both of us. Under these two mini-laterals, facing both US and China, in separate framework. It's in a way a luxury for us to be able to do this, but we have not taken advantage of this strategic opportunity reasonably well. Lastly, deterrence is of course important, as being repeated frequently by many people. But if deterrence becomes the concept of this trilateral thing, I mean, US, Japan, Korea, yes. But this doesn't work vis-a-vis China in this trilateral. So I propose to replace the concept of deterrence and when we make discussions between Japan and South Korea with the concept of stable balance of power. Balance of power is much more comprehensive, and we should try to maintain, stable balance of power against the US-China strategic rivalry. So that would be my last sort of
Thank you.
point.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Dr. Cha, that we've almost cut you out of the discussion. The final speaker is Dr. Victor Cha, who's supposed to be leaving in 4 or 5 minutes, so please, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Karen. And I too want to add my congratulations to the Asan Institute, Chairman Chung, for another Asan Plenum 2025. Really a wonderful event. So I do not cast as large a shadow as John Hamre. I'm substituting in for John Hamre, who's actually substituting in for Dr. Edward Fulner, both of whom are great friends of the Asan Institute. And so I send their apologies that they cannot be here today, but I'm very honored to share the stage with such a distinguished group. I'm going to make 4 quick points, but I do want to tell one Rich Armitage story, as Kurt Campbell mentioned in his keynote remarks. And I think it's important for a Korean audience in particular. And that is, I think many Koreans think of Rich Armitage in particular for the role he played in the US-Japan alliance. The Armitage Nye reports that a number of us, like Randy Shriver, Sheila Smith, and others participated in. I think in Korea he was very much known as a Japan person, but that's actually not true. He was very much an advocate of the US-Korea alliance. When I was at the White House, he was Deputy Secretary of State, and he was always asking about the US-Korea alliance because there were many things that were going on there, including force realignment and other sorts of issues. But my favorite story in this regard is when we were all out of government, the Obama administration, President Obama was going to make a trip to Asia, and Korea was not initially on the itinerary. So I received a call from him one morning, early in the morning, as he was often wont to do with many of us. And he said, Victor, you know that Obama's going to Asia? And I said, yes. He goes, you know, Korea is not on the agenda. And I said, yes. He goes, well, Korea should be on the agenda. And I said, I agree with you. And he said, let's write an op-ed. So we wrote an op-ed together with Mike Green in the Washington Post. And President Obama went to Korea. And that was all because of Rich Armitage. It was Rich Armitage who pushed that. And so I just think a Korean audience should know that. Okay, let me make 4 quick points about South Korea's most important neighbor, the United States, because I consider the U.S. an Indo-Pacific neighbor of South Korea's. And in particular, I want to make 4 points that use MAGA, or America First logic, to explain why the United States needs to support rather than decouple from the US-Korea alliance. Right? And so the first of these points is we've all heard about how Trump is very transactional when it comes to alliances. It's all about what you get from the alliance. And so using this logic, you could argue that it's very important for the second Trump administration to continue to invest very deeply in the US-Korea alliance. In many ways, the dividends are now being paid today for investments that were made not by Trump, but by administrations for many years going backwards. Some of you know I wrote a book about the origins of the US alliance system in Asia, where in the beginning, the flow of military assistance, economic assistance, training, all went in one direction. from the United States to our allies in Asia. And now these allies, including South Korea, are paying incredible dividends on things like development assistance, artificial intelligence, shipbuilding, something Trump cares a lot about, strategic energy cooperation, something else that they care a lot about, chips, cooperation in outer space. There are many dividends that are being paid that even a transactional president should see as important. Second, President Trump is all about leverage, whether that's in a business deal or whether that's in international politics or whether it's vis-a-vis the competition from China. And here, it would behoove the administration to continue to invest in trilateralism, the US, Japan, Korea trilateral relationship, because it does provide a great deal of leverage with regard to China. It provides a great deal of leverage with regard to the so-called cohering of an autocratic access, as well as other conduit states that might be related to that access. I've talked to many people who served in the first Trump administration, who serve in the current one, that see the investment in trilateralism not as just something the Biden administration did, but something that the first Trump administration also did. So they take ownership of that as well. So that would be the second. The third is that Donald Trump has a great deal of antipathy towards Europe, and particularly European dominance of global governance and international institutions. And so in this respect, the United States should encourage something that Kurt Campbell said at the very end of his speech, which is a more global role for Korea. Whether that is as part of the G7, some of you know CSIS has collected some very interesting data about how Korea is a high performer among G7 countries in many of the issues that G7 countries care about, whether it's the Indo-Pacific Four, participation in NATO, and then as a member of the Quad. These are all things where Korea can play a much bigger role in global governance. And then the fourth point is that America First policy always talks about burden sharing among allies, greater burden sharing by allies. And here, I think South Korea, the next South Korean government, and the United States would do well to encourage greater cooperation, security, defense cooperation among Europe and the Indo-Pacific. Again, we're part of a project with Luis Simon at CSDS in Brussels. I think I've made more trips to Europe than I have made to Asia in the last year, because the conversation in Europe about Indo-Pacific security is seen as directly related to European security. Whether it's a contingency in Korea or in the Taiwan Straits that could provide an opportunity for opportunistic aggression by Russia. These things are all interlinked. They're one theater. And in that sense, the Biden administration, with their mini-lateral strategy, really did lay the groundwork for allies and partners in Europe and Asia to do more together in the context of a potentially retrenching United States. So those were the 4 points I wanted to make very quickly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was terrific. You may be excused whenever you have to. We will continue. I mean, what interests
You're not coming back?
me here is that most everyone has given prominence to trilateralism, and yet, which one of you pointed out that if Mr. Lee wins the election, trilateralism from a Korean point of view may wither. How significant is that? If everyone has put emphasis on trilateralism, if it withers instead of grows? Go ahead, Professor
Okay,
Lee.
because Karen, because I had to rush for the 4 minutes in the beginning. I didn't thank to Honorary Chairman Jong Mong-jun and Chairman Yoon Young-ga
Sorry.
and the President Chae-gang. It was wonderful to hold this year's plenum again. Usually when progressive is in power in Korea, they like to improve the relations with North Korea. And that's why during the Moon Jae-in government, he actually liked this top-down approach by President Trump at that time. As you remember, 2018, the meeting between Kim Jong-un and Trump. And also it's true that progressives in Korea tend to be more critical about the past history issues with Japan. There is that kind of tendency. So if the opposition leader Lee Jae-myung wins the election on June 3rd, the presidential election in Korea, there'll be some reorientation. However, I doubt he's also a very pragmatic candidate. So given the very grave situation, I think he will try to but I'm nothing to do with his camp at all, but because the situation surrounding Korea is so great, so I think this historical issue with Japan can be sidelined, and he will try to rekindle the cooperation with the USA, definitely because of tariff issues. IMF forecasted South Korea's economic growth will be cut into half, so it's only 1% this year because of tariff sanctions, impositions. So there are many economic challenges, right? And also when he deals with the USA, I think it's rational to consider South Korea needs Japan as a partner to work toward USA. I'm sure there must be many advice, the trained diplomats and so forth, and scholars. So there'll be some adjustment, but I don't see kind of upending or very different approaches between the current and coming new government.
Dr. Hammer's, go ahead.
I just want to have two comments to make.
Yes, sir.
I was asked to talk about 3 or 4 minutes,
Right.
but then
And
I
I
greatly
appreciate that you obeyed.
We obeyed.
Okay. Well, there is a lot of talk about alliance, as if alliance can resolve the problems. Actually, the past years have shown that alliances do make progress in terms of solving some problems, but at the same time, you create others. Okay. Why China-U.S. relationship is in such a shape? In part because of the alliance. Okay. China is excluded from security dialogues, from a lot of alliance-related matters. So over time, alliances created a situation in which you have we and them kind of relationship. Okay. So alliance is not going to solve all the problems. We need to go beyond that. For the region, we need more collaboration across alliances. Okay. Like the North Korean nuclear issue, it's not going to be resolved by the alliance. Okay. The tariff problem is not going to be resolved by the alliance. Okay. It's a fiction that it can resolve everything. Second point is partnerships, alliances are regarded as leverages against China. Well, maybe sometimes when China maybe abuses its power, but a partnership should also be used against any country that abuses power. At the moment or in the past, the U.S. has abused power. Okay. And we should make sure that our partnerships would be used as a check to against any abuse of power by powerful countries. So it's not just against China. I think it should be used against any abuse of power. Okay. Thank
We're
you.
trying to focus here on Korea and the fact that you have turmoil going on around it and big divisions inside it, and Trump perhaps again wanting to either reduce troops or make South Korea pay more. And how does South Korea try to protect itself in that environment? And Dr. Hamry said last night, that we have to focus on if the U.S. won't leave troops in South Korea, that will do everything possible to avoid nuclear use, then why would anybody believe that our nuclear deterrent was of any utility? So I would like to ask you all, should South Korea, as Dr. Chung advocates, seek either the return of American tactical nuclear weapons to South Korea or your own indigenous nuclear capability? And okay, you two, go ahead.
Yes. Well, thank you, Colin. Well, this is a very the relevant question. But before coming to that question, I also like to talk a little bit about Japan's relationship with United States and the China in the context of this region. I mean, in the South Korea, Japan region. And first of all, the U.S. presence in the region has been and will be critically important. And so we would like to keep this alliance with the United States going stronger. But as Kurt mentioned earlier, that the maintenance of an alliance needs every kind of bits of pieces of efforts for both sides, and we are determined to continue to do that. But with that, the context, back in 2022, Japan adopted new a national security strategy, and with which Japan has been doing more effort to make our kind of a defense capabilities and defense scope on its own, in Japanese version, very much at the top priority of issues for the Japanese security and also the regional security. So that's kind of trend. And Japan is very much looking forward to work closely with the United States to maintain this very important alliance, but the new role of Japan in that context. And we are faced with the North Korean nuclear and the missile issues, which we have dealt with many decades. Mr. Yabanaka sitting over there, and with him, we participate in the six-party talks from the beginning of this century, and still the North Korea's nuclear and missile issues are really a threatening issue for the security of the region. And we have an abduction issue too, and unresolved, pending there. So we need to work closely together for the stakeholders in this, with South Korea, China, and others, United States and others. But so this is the pending issue of nuclear kind of threat posed by the North Korea that we have to deal with. And on China, Japan and China, with a very important partners in the region, we have a basic idea of a strategic and mutually beneficial relationship between Japan and China. And this concept is ongoing concept. So of course we do have differences and we have issues, but we need to overcome those issues and problems, but we need to expand the scope of cooperation to the future. I think the stable relationship among the partners, kind of important partners in the region should be enhanced in that context. So come back to the nuclear issue. Of course, we, Japan, we have a very strong sense of kind of feeling about the nuclear things because of the experience.
History.
So the Japan is not in a position to jump into something the new area. But talking about the deterrence, the making the deterrence effective, that is a very important part of the alliance management, and South Korea is also the same kind of issue for that. So the trilateral relationship among Japan, Korea, and United States has a wide range of scope and agenda, and then we are looking forward to work closely with it. But the trilateral of Japan, Korea, China, we have a headquarters of the trilateral cooperation here in Seoul, and I have been involved in that to some extent. And this another trilateral cooperation also has a potential, meaning in the region's prosperity and stability. That I'd like to mention that. Thank you.
Mr.
Yeah,
Ambassador.
thank you, Karen. Let me start with the issue of trilateralism in the Indo-Pacific. It is true that that effort was initiated by the Japanese government under Prime Minister Abe. And at the time, Korea-Japan relations were soured, and then Japan, I don't know whether it be intentionally or unintentionally, they sidelined Korea in the making of many trilateral networks in the Indo-Pacific. But after the restoration of Korea-Japan relations since 2012 under the Yoon administration, we just beefed up trilateralism in our foreign policy, and Korea, U.S.-Japan trilateral partnership has been reinforced at the Camp David summit meeting. And I think that trilateralism in the Indo-Pacific is very important to just complement the American alliance system in the Indo-Pacific. Unlike Europe, there is no multilateral security institution like NATO. So Spoke and Herb alliance is scattered in the Indo-Pacific. So to connect these separate Hub and Spoke alliance, they introduced the trilateralism and minilateralism, like lattice type networking. So it was just initiated under the Biden administration and made progress. I hope that this progress has been maintained, will be maintained under the second Trump administration. And coming back to the issue of tactical nuclear weapons, I am one of those who have supported the deployment of tactical nuclear weapons into Korea. The reason is that to just cope with North Korean nuclear threat, we have to rely on three issues: denuclearization, defense, and deterrence. So the aspect of the nuclearization has been moved since the failure of the Vietnam Hanoi summit in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to count on more on defense and deterrence. And in terms of deterrence, we need to beef up or reinforce our deterrence capability And to this end, the deployment of tactical nuclear weapons into Korea is one of the cardinal elements to show North Korea that they cannot use tactical nuclear weapons just in the face of tactical nuclear weapons deployed in South Korea. I think we have to remember the precedent of double decision in the 1980s in Europe. So I think I am fully in line with what President Jong Mong-jun said in the welcoming speech this morning. Thank you.
Can I just ask if there's anyone in the audience who wants to ask a question? We have only 10 more minutes, so if you want to say something or ask something, now is the time to, yes, Paul. Paul Wolfowitz.
Mike.
Turn it on. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, during intermission, you asked me whether Camp David was more than just a meeting, and I would say yes, it's more than just a meeting. It's encouraged some serious, concrete cooperation between the three militaries. And I think the example that may be ultimately most important is they've begun working on a trilateral warning system in the event of a North Korean missile attack. And if you think back to what happened when Iran attacked Israel, what was it, a month or two ago, there was incredible, not just trilateral, I think it was quadrilateral or pentalateral cooperation between the U.S. and several countries in the region. Missile defense is certainly one area, but there are many others where trilateral cooperation can really make a concrete difference. I was going to say on the ground, but it's actually in the air.
So your point would be it's important to continue that trilateral cooperation. And I guess that's one of the things I heard in doubt here. I wanted to raise that no one here really raised the issue of Taiwan, and then, yeah, he wants to say something. So is that because South Korea's, in essence, has no intention of being involved in anything that takes place in Taiwan? I just read before coming here, actually, I'm on the board of RAND, a RAND report called The Power of Three, in which they interviewed various South Koreans, Japanese, and Americans, and not by name, so you don't know who said what, but one of them said that, in essence, there is no trilateralism on that issue. No one mentioned Taiwan. Is that because it's not seen at home? It's very, very important. A lot of talk about what would the U.S. do if the Chinese do something in Taiwan on the 100th anniversary of the PLA in 2027, or, you know, President Xi has basically said that they would be ready by 2027. So I'm curious if anyone has anything to say on that, but you wanted to say something on something else, but maybe something on this too?
Okay, on the possible deployment or making nuclear weapons in South Korea, I don't think it's going to increase security for South Korea. The reason that North Korea developed nuclear weapons is to make up its weakness in conventional capabilities. Okay? And if South Korea develops nuclear weapons or deploys nuclear weapons, or the US nuclear weapons, then South Korea could be pushed into the corner and do something. And also, deployment of technical nuclear weapons in South Korea can also lead to other dire consequences. the non-proliferation regime of international non-proliferation regime would be severely undermined. Okay. Probably other countries would want nuclear weapons. Okay. So this is something we must be very careful about. On Taiwan, I think China's policy of peaceful reunification has not been changed. Okay. So, as Chinese, we hope that other countries, especially the U.S., will not encourage the Taiwan separatists to push their agenda to force China to take military actions. So this is what we hope, but then there are people who are working on this because they want to create problems for China, and they want to create a conflict that the U.S. can win before it's too late. Okay. Thank you.
Karen?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, can I say briefly about Taiwan issues? I think I can watch two things. At the official level, if you read the Camp Date statement, and of course, the leaders from 3 countries are saying they are opposing any coercive changes in the status quo, and they want to keep more international law and peace and that kind of thing. So I think at that level, there is a very common agreement among 3 countries, US, Korea, and Japan. However, if you go into more detail, I think the Japanese side is more proactive in helping Taiwan compared to Korean.
And Korea.
Yeah, I think ordinary Koreans are thinking if we drag into the conflict surrounding Taiwan, between China and Taiwan, and U.S. forces in Korea can be used to defend Taiwan, and they can create the kind of opportunity for Pyongyang to do some dangerous things, right? Invading or doing some bombing or some kind of things. So there is some kind of that kind of fear among Koreans. However, if you look at the survey, I can watch more and more Koreans, ordinary Korean citizens, are supporting the defending Taiwan is important. I cannot remember the exact number, but there is a trend that they deserve their own peace.
We have only 3 minutes left, and I wanted to ask, yes, Professor Soeya, if you have anything you wanted to say, because you've been more silent.
Well, I thought I spoke too much time in my presentation, but two points. One is about the possibility of liberal administration coming in power in South Korea, which seems to be very high, and which will be somewhat anti-America, I think, in its kind of philosophical attitude, thinking of key advisors to the president. And but President Trump, occasionally talks about North Korea, but not much these days. And I think that's because he doesn't have any clear idea with respect to North Korea. And Ukraine and the Middle East come first. And Mr. Kim Jong-un also is under totally different circumstances today. In the first Trump administration, I think the very reason why he went out very courageously to Singapore and Hanoi was because he wanted to create a peaceful environment on the peninsula, which would make President Trump, make it easier for President Trump to sort of begin to think of withdrawing American military presence. So somewhat similar to what happened in the 70s in the Korean Peninsula and under Nixon administration. And but that condition is gone. So I think there is no sure things with which to talk about sort of President Trump's North Korean policy. And so President Lee Myung-bak, if he gets elected, he would have somewhat freedom to engage in North Korean diplomacy. And I don't know what is going to be. And Taiwan, just simple word, I think, maintaining status quo should be the way to deal with this issue. Of course, officially, until the peaceful unification gets realized. And the process toward that end goal should be stable, and which is virtually maintaining status quo. And Korea cannot engage in militarily, perhaps, but there are a whole other ways of contributing to strategic stability across the Taiwan Strait.
I want to, before I thank the panel, to again thank Dr. Chung for this conference, for including me. As everyone up here said, it's a real privilege to be here. And I want to, again, acknowledge the high quality of the opening film. I think those are among the stars of this gathering every year. And I want to thank the panel and ask you to join me in thanking the panel.